Again, fast forwarding. When we received word to pull out of Lipa, which is where they were, the reason given was that the Japanese had landed a few miles from us. And if we did not get out of there in a hurry, we might be overrun. So think about that. You know, here you are, you're American, you got the strongest military, you come from this giant country, and all of a sudden the Japanese, who you weren't even at war with 4 days ago, now they're landing on beach and you're under the threat of being overrun. I look back now and think that the real story was that the Japs landed in force and they, our commanders, wanted all of us evacuated to the Bataan Peninsula as quickly as possible. So they move, they march, they end up in Bataan. They no longer have tents and they're living basically outside in little shelters that they're building. And they're starting to get bombed all the time. Here we go, back to the book. Bombs frighten the devil out of me. I figured there was no way I could survive so many close calls day after day. There was many a day when bombs fell within 20 or 30 feet of me, and eventually some much closer. If it had not been for strategically located foxholes, I know I would not be here today. So these guys are getting just crushed. Because I didn't mention this part, but you remember when he said when they left Pearl Harbor, they saw the ships with their planes on them? The planes never showed up. They got bombed in Pearl Harbor. So they had like just a few planes that had already been there in the Philippines. They didn't have an actual war loadout of planes. So the Japanese had total air superiority, and that's why they were able to just bomb them with complete unrestricted violence. Back to the book. During a bombing raid, I would normally peep over the edge of my foxhole to see where the planes were. At first, all you knew was that they were headed in your direction and you had better stay put. As they got closer and closer, you could tell better if they were going to pass to the side of you or if they were coming directly over. You remember the book we read where it builds up with the heavies coming? Mm-hmm. The big slow roar. It's Ernie Pyle, and he's talking about how the big slow roar is coming, and he looks up and he sees it's the heavies. And how the guys were just so happy that the bombers were coming. The big allied American bombers were coming to give them support. Well, this is the opposite. This is what it's like to be on the ground. Yeah. And the heavies are coming. The Japanese bombers are coming. Here we go. Back to the book. If they were directly overhead, you began to sweat because that meant you were about to take a pounding. As you watched the planes, you could all of a sudden see many small flashes of silver appear just below the planes. This meant that their bombs had been dropped and they were on their way down. These silver flashes were only visible for a few seconds, then disappeared. If you were still looking up, the next thing you saw and now heard were these large black objects coming at you with a terrible hissing sound. In a fraction of a second, they were exploding with a terrific bang as they hit the ground. They did not go off simultaneously, but one at a time until they had all exploded. If the bombs were just in front of you, you could hear them getting closer and closer, and that was the scary part. It wasn't until you could hear the explosives go past you that you knew you were safe and could now relax. That's when you thanked God for foxholes. So we've talked about similar before with people being in the trenches in World War I. I think it was Bob Hoffman that was talking about in his book, I Remember the Last War, where when they would get mortared or hit with artillery, that's how artillery works. You fire around, then you move a little to the left, then you fire around, then you move a little to the left, then you fire around, and then you move a little to the left. And so you knew, you could feel it's getting closer and closer and closer and closer, and until it goes by you, you're waiting to get blown up. You're waiting to die. And that's exactly what he's talking about here.